Hello, everybody. It is Sunday, the 8th of June. I want to talk about the way that humanity is going wrong, the way that humanity has always gone wrong, the way from spirituality into religion, where we had so many times periods where there was a flourishing like it is at the moment, which is actually a flourishing of the knowledge of ourselves, which is spirituality. It is the knowledge of self. And every time that happens, we're being sheep-herded into religion. Not only over a period of time, but it can happen within one lifetime. You start with spirituality and you're being sheep-herded into religion. And really that we must stop doing that. Because as soon as we are in religion, we have no power. We become that which is ruled over by something else. Or we become that must fight something else out there. I want to show you this here. Something happened to me yesterday, which really kicked the whole thing off. And there was an agricultural fair here in our town yesterday, and we love going to those things, love going to talk to the sheep. Anyway, so we were there, all those different stalls, and Scientology in the middle of it all. I couldn't believe it. So how on earth did you get here? Just a stall with all these Dianetics books everywhere. L. Ron Hubbard's book. And I was like, whoa. Especially since this is a very Christian, staunch Christian area. Lots of varieties of Christianity, yes, but nothing outside of it. So I was like, ooh, how did you sneak in? Anyway, I was going past and your man came toward me, trying to flog the book and say, you know what, I've got it. Standing on my shelf, go away. Read halfway through it, which is true. I halfway through it, and at some point it lost me. But so I walked on, and the guy was actually running after me with a leaflet and his personal card. If I have any questions, to please contact him. No, I don't think so. Anyway, I came home and I just look into Scientology. What the hell is actually going on here? And it opened so many eyes. Then I looked at what L. Ron Hubbard himself was doing, what he did, and the way it evolved, and it did evolve from Dianetics to Scientology, and what that evolution actually contained. Because to be quite honest, when I read the book first, halfway as I got there, I was wondering how on earth did this turn into a religion? This is not religion. If you read the Dianetics book, it's not religion. At best, it's a form of psychology. Yeah? And I never looked any further into it at that time. How did that turn into a religion? And here is, and you can actually see the entire way in L. Ron Hubbard himself, just using him as an example for a greater truth. Because he was so spot on. It's unreal. So it started with Dianetics, which is, as I said, it is a form of psychology. Now, whether it is a form that actually works is a different question. And in Dianetics, there is the idea that we are gods. Again, that's what they said. We are gods. We are we have forgotten who we are. We are powerful beings. Again, Aaron Hubbard was encouraging the thought of spiritual powers, say it like this, which in this world it really comes down to telepathy, telekinesis, energy healing, the way of changing or moving solid reality by the power of the mind. So actually it's not just the mind, it is the power of your entire being, which contains more than thought. But just that. And again, up to that point, I'm completely on board with him. So if I had gotten into Dianetics at the time, I would have agreed. From where I'm now, I would have agreed to that point. And then the whole thing turned into a religion. How? Because L. Ron Hubbard started telling a different story. Not the story of us, not concentrating on the story of us and what we are, but involving a being from another world. Zeno, I think he called him. And then spinning the entire story of, I don't know, they threw out some of their own population, brought them to Earth, destroyed them, their spirit is now here, is detached to us, and we must kind of fight them or cleanse ourselves of them or something. Again, it is the story of us being influenced by some great God, alien being, whatever you want to call it. It's not in this world. And the focus goes there. The focus goes from ourselves to there. And in Scientology, especially in Scientology, that is actually an evolution that kind of is portrayed as you are going to a higher state of knowledge. So the story of Zeno is being told to the high-ranking Scientologists. And then really you are now on a higher level of awareness because you know about Zeno. Before that, it was mundane, it was just the knowledge of us. But that is the higher knowledge. And this is exactly where everything is always going. I mean, Jesus himself went there. That is the path which supposedly leads into enlightenment. It does not. Enlightenment was the first part, where we know about ourselves, the knowledge within. That is enlightenment. There is a point, a mark. You have to hit and you stay within. Before you know about what you are, but I believe we are, you're below that knowledge. You're below the knowledge of self. You go out the other side. You shoot past the knowledge of self to the worship of a god or something. You have missed the mark. You've gone past the point of enlightenment. And they call that then the greater enlightenment, knowing about something out there. It's not. The point is here. The point is us. That's the point we have to hit, the mark we have to hit. And going past that is not going into greatness. It's moving away from the point again. So, I mean, Jesus did that. Aaron Hubbard did that. Others are doing that right now. They start at a point of truth, of ourselves, and they move away from that point out there. There are other things he did which then it becomes religion, or the practice of religion. Yeah? The separation. Creating a separation from others. Yeah? You are here within the group of the brethren, and you're separated from everything else around you, because we are the only truth. I just watched a program where they were talking about that, and let me just say the other thing he did, and that is the fair game policy. So that is to say, if somebody leaves Scientology, or if anybody tries, let's say you have a family member that got into Scientology and you're trying to get them out, you are a threat to Scientology, and then you are fair game. And I think the Scientologists go quite a way to destroying you if you do that. And as I said, I watched a program where it was made out like L. Ron Hubbard was this genius that created this system. Yeah? He did create nothing new. He only saw how it works. He gave it a slightly different spin. But in the end, he did the same thing that has been done for God knows how long. Because that is the way of religion. Not of spirituality, but of religion. That is the way. The way of separation, the way of destroying the enemy without your exclusive little group. He invented nothing new. He only saw. He became aware of what was happening, and he worked it himself. And I say many that create religions are just aware of how it works. They're not, say, nothing new in this world. It's happening over and over again. Because most people are not aware of how it works. So, as I said, and I think the old way, or the way that was in this world for a while before it became destroyed again by a religion, by the fanatics, the way of the mystery schools was the search for the knowledge of self. It was not a religion. It was a search for the knowledge of self, for the search for inside, not outside. To understand what it is we are. Again, I read another book, Not in My Name, which talked about the mystery schools. And there was a lot of, let's say, good historical information in there of what actually happened at the time. But there was one point where he was talking about Sophia as a goddess. Or he kept talking about the goddess Sophia. And if you think Sophia was a goddess, again, you're looking at that through the eyes of religion. There's something out there so much greater than us, and Sophia is one of the gods in the pleroma. And then I was thinking, you're writing a book about something you never understood in the first place. Because that is the view of the uninitiated, that's the view of the ignorant. Again, they cause separation. Being inclusive, very much so, which was a mistake, absolutely a mistake, because that allows ignorance to grow outside of what you're doing, and that ignorance came up against them and destroyed them. That was their mistake. But Sophia is not a goddess. It's not a being. It is an aspect of yourself, again, and that is the knowledge of within, of what you are. The eons are aspects of yourself. Wisdom should be an aspect of yourself. A husband, desire, Thelatos, desire, is an aspect of yourself. And that is true spirituality, which we are being led away from every time through religion. Every time. The realization of who we are and what we are and how far we extend beyond the solid. We are greater than the solid. We are more than the solid. And this way into religion is already, as I said it in my video before, that is what is happening at the moment with this whole simulation theory thing. That is going to be the next religion. There is the technology religion that you're being sheep-herded into, away from what we really should be searching for, which is the truth of ourselves. So, I mean, it's just by looking at or being drawn to Scientology as an example, where I was directed to looking into that as an example. It actually showed me something that goes far beyond Scientology. It is a way of doing things. These ways just take on different forms. But it is always that you're being directed, in the end, you're being directed towards something that is out there. That is almighty, that is having, it is in control of everything and you have none. That is the way. And I said people are being sheep-herded into groups that become inclusive. Everything outside is fair game, and God, I've seen it happening in this country. Especially in this country, with religious people in this country. Really, you have to watch them like hawks if they are deeply religious. Because it is just that, it is that there's rules of conduct within their group, and those rules might be good, but everything outside is fair game. If you're not one of the brethren, you're fair game. And that's that, and really, that really, again, let me just go there for a minute, because that also, if you are not in a group, to me, I'm not part of a group. To me, nothing is fair game. There is no people out there that are fair game, to me. It is this inclusivity that creates others that are fair game. Anyway, just moved from the point there. The point is that there is something out there. And another thing religion does is that it explains the power of ourselves, which I believe to be real. And we really must find out who we are. But it explains the power of ourselves as being given by something else. Through the power of something else, by another powerful being, the power is being given to you. And again, you're in a position where you have to serve that other powerful being so that it doesn't take your power away. You go into bondage. You go into slavery. Because your power is depending on them. And it is not. It is the truth of yourself. But again, finding the truth of yourself, being in the truth of yourself, you have to take responsibility. Then there's nothing out there doing it for you. You would have to do it yourself. And I don't know what drives people into religion. Maybe it is laziness, maybe, to a point. Can't be bothered, can't be asked to do it myself. I just sit here and howl to do for somebody else to do it for me. Or many, it's a perception of self to start with. I'm nothing, I need something else to do it for me. But it is also very convenient, You don't actually have to bother. You don't have to bother, you don't have to take responsibility. If anything goes belly up, well, you can blame God. Now the last thing, again looking at Scientologists and then the story they came up with in the end, the Zeno story, to me sounds made up. And let's face it, L. Ron Hubbard was a science fiction, he was a writer of fiction. That was one of his foundations, yeah? So he was good at that. He knew what he was doing. But to me, that sounds like fantasy. Now, the gods of the Bible, if you trace that back to Sumerian times, and actually backed up by archaeology now, a lot of it, that proves the stories were right. That means that story might actually be based on some reality. I think there's a possibility that is based on reality. It doesn't actually change that we should look for our own truth, because there are others there, which I believe there are others there. That should not mean our focus should be there. For the purpose of religion, I don't think it matters whether they are existing or not, because that is the power of belief. Tell them a good story, they believe they will live within that matrix, the matrix of that story. That is their reality. But as I said, as far as Christian religion or the Abrahamic religions are concerned, I think that's based on some truth. Doesn't mean our focus should be there. Our focus should be with ourselves. Now, if they are real, which they may well be real, I think there are other beings and there are people that have experiences that are real, experiencing a reality beyond what we know, but still a reality. So, where was I going? They are experiencing that reality, but if the idea is for humanity to become part of a greater family, of a greater web of consciousness of beings, then we should be uniquely ourselves, to give out of our knowledge into that web. We should be uniquely ourselves. And if the idea was that there were others, but they were watchers, again, kind of the Star Trek prime directive, non-interference in the development of others, well, then they should have remained watchers. The interference, I think it did happen and it shouldn't have happened. We are now confronted, I think, with a reality that it did happen and it did influence us. But the more we look out there, the more we're getting influence. That doesn't make the situation any better. Yeah, if you say one influence did drive us one way, so now we find another influence to drive us another way, and we are, what Paul said, being blown by any wind that blows. Whatever influences us, we run. And then saying that the only way out of it is to find only one influence out there and stick with that. Yeah? One unchanging influence that will influence humanity forever. Then that one influence will create humanity. Whichever way they want humanity to be, and most likely to be slaves. So that is the way then. We must be influenced, there must be a God. All our powers are given to us through that being, whatever it is. And we must be influenced by only one. Or should we find our own truth and make that our guiding light? Not to be influenced by anything out there. And that means no more religion, but pure spirituality, pure knowledge of self, not influenced by anything else outside of this world. In this world, we are being influenced by nature, but that is part of this world and that is part of who we are. We are the level of man in this world, that is human. The level of man of this world. As I said, we're at the moment, there is an awakening, we're going into spirituality. We are becoming aware of the stories of the past and where they may have come from. Actually, some of it really scientific, if you go the way of archaeology and stuff like that. Now, the stories of the past is the story of how we were influenced. If the story of the future is again being influenced. Yep. Again, we're going from the past, we're seeing we're influenced, we were below what we truly are. We're coming to a point of self-awareness, of an awakening of the knowledge of self, and now we're being driven to what is supposedly the greater knowledge. Them out there. And here we go, it's the same path all over again, every time. You go from the knowledge of self and then you go out there to the greater knowledge, and that is not the greater knowledge, that is driving you back into bondage, that is driving you back into slavery. That is where you forget yourself again. You're going from not knowing to awakening into forgetting again. And that is the circle we're going around every time. From ignorance to spirituality to religion, which is back into ignorance. And being divided from each other all the time, not because they have different ways, they're always going the same way. They just dress it up slightly different to make people believe they believe in something different. Again, the way of spirituality should be for all, and it should unite humanity. Again, it cannot be done the way of the mystery schools, where it was inclusive and ignorance was allowed to be outside. It must be given to all. The knowledge must be given to all. And then again, love your neighbor as yourself. Don't do unto others what you don't want to be done to yourself. It is basic. Yeah? It doesn't take the brains of an archbishop to work that one out. Anyway, here I leave it at that for today. We must become aware of what it is we're doing and what is happening. We must start to see the patterns. Pattern recognition. And not just talk about pattern recognition, but do it. Anyway, here, I leave it at that. And I talk to you again soon. Bye.